Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Art Like Everything Else, the podcast. My name is Simone, and this week we're going to be talking about community. And no, not the show. So it's not uncommon to actually desire a place to belong, to desire wanting to be a part of a group. It is something innately human, actually. It's a feeling that a lot of us have from childhood, and it follows us all the way into adulthood. And as a result, there's been a lot of beautiful art that has kind of came out of this desire for community. And so, yeah, we have a lot of art that might depict this type of desire. If you have any favorite works of art that kind of discuss community, I want you to drop them in the comments below. I'd love to check them out. And who knows, maybe it can be discussed in a future episode. The first piece of art that we're going to be discussing is a movie, and it's not just any movie, but it's a movie from a well-known franchise with many beloved characters. So this franchise has books, shows, even rides. It's none other. So in this particular movie, it's actually about a secondary character in this franchise. And so we are talking about none other than the Tigger movie. So Tigger, the character, was first seen in the Winnie the Pooh series, in the book The House at Pooh Corner in the year 1926. He is based on a stuffed animal owned by the child this series was kind of based on. So for those who may not have known, the Winnie the Pooh series was written by Alan Alexander Milne, and it's based on his son and at his kind of like his son's imagination and so this movie that we're talking about came out in 2000, and I'm going to give a description. I won't give away too much in case you do still want to go back and watch this movie. I really enjoyed the movie. Tigger is my favorite character, so I might be a bit biased, but there's songs, there's all kinds of stuff in the movie that if you want to go back and watch this movie, I would personally recommend it. So to kind of get into a description of the movie, so this movie follows Tigger and his search for his family. So Tigger kind of messes up a project that Rabbit's working on, and then he's kind of made aware, not so subtly in my opinion, that he's the only Tigger around. And so, kind of sad about that, he goes off by himself. And then while he's on his own, Roo, the little kangaroo, kind of comes up and talks to him and kind of asks, what about your own family? Do you have your own family? And then that kind of gets the gears going in Tigger's mind, and he's like, yo, I should have a family. And then so they go and get some advice from Owl, and then after getting their advice, Tigger kind of sets out to try to find his family tree. And when he doesn't find his family tree, he decides to write a letter. And so he writes a letter, sends it off, and he's waiting and waiting, and he doesn't get a response for a few days. His friends, so people at people at 100 Acre Woods, folks at 100 Acre Woods, they see Tigger is upset about this, and so after a few days, after Tigger's kind of not gotten a response, they as a group kind of decide to write him a letter, and they send it to him so that he feels like he got a response from his letter. And so when Tigger gets this letter, he reads it, he's excited, he misinterprets what the letter is saying, and so he thinks his family is coming to see him. And so in his excitement, he decides he wants to throw a family reunion party, and he starts kind of going about to set up and decorate for a party. Now, folks at 100 Acre Woods, they kind of scramble because they're like, what I didn't think he was gonna do all that. We got to figure out something. Rue kind of has the idea of like, hey, maybe we should dress up as Tiggers and kind of come to the party so that like he don't feel like he was abandoned. And so they do that. And for a little bit it works, but then like in all movies, well, like in most movies, especially when disguises are involved, Tigger finds out the truth. He gets really upset and he runs out into the middle of a winter storm. His friends go after him, so folks at 100 Acre Wood go after him. They trying to convince him to come back because Tigger's their friend. Tigger's like, they consider Tigger to be a part of their community, and they want to convince him to come back. And so while this is all happening, an avalanche occurs, and Tigger has to save his friends, and then he also kind of has to be saved by his own friends. And like, after all of this happens, the folks at 100 Acre Woods do kind of tell Tigger like, hey, it was us who wrote that letter. And Tigger kind of is able to come to the realization like, oh, so these people are my community, like these people are my family. And like that family and community that like he's been looking for and kind of been in search of all this time. And so that isn't unlike our next character in the next work of art that we're going to be discussing, who also is seeking community. So in our second piece of art for this discussion, so is the movie Marcel the Cell with Shoes On. So this movie was released in 2021, and it is based on a short film series that released 3 episodes. So there was 1 episode released in 2010, 1 episode released in 2011, and 1 episode released in 2014. I really highly suggest you watch this series. I'm gonna link the episodes in the description or in like the show notes, and so definitely check it out. I highly recommend it. It's a really good show. It's a really good movie as well. So like, I am going to give a bit of a brief description of the movie, but I'm going to abstain or try to like not give away too many of the bigger spoilers, because I personally do believe you should go watch this movie. Like, this might become a movie I watch every year, to be honest. It was that good. I really enjoyed it, and I feel like it's definitely a really good movie to watch. But okay, so the movie, brief description starting now. The movie follows a guy whose name is Dean. He moves into an Airbnb because he's going through a divorce with his wife. And he discovers Marcel, and he decides to kind of make a documentary type style video. And so he starts taking videos of Marcel and his grandmother Connie, who also lives in this Airbnb that he's renting. And like, he's just kind of filming Marcel doing all kinds of things, filming Grandma Connie doing all kinds of things. And like, yeah, they're kind of just doing that. Marcel kind of talks about how he misses his parents, he misses his family, his community. All of them kind of used to be staying in that Airbnb together. And then something happened and he was separated from his family. So Dean, the guy who moved in there and is taking a video, he decides to upload some of the footage he took of Marcel, and it goes viral online. Like, imagine a little talking shell, really cute. I can see how that definitely easily go viral. Yeah, so it goes viral online, and then Marcel kind of like seeing like, oh, there's a lot of people looking at me, maybe I can get their help. Uses the fame and recognition he gets from this virality to kind of make a plea to get help from the people who are watching him, to help him find his family and the community he lost when like the situation happened that separated him from his community that was also there before. And so this virality, though, as virality often can, turns into be a bit more of a hindrance than a benefit. So eventually Marcel does get the chance to have a really big interview that kind of jumpstarts his ability to find his community again. And that's gonna be the gist of the movie that I tell you. There is a lot more that kind of goes on in this movie. I will highly recommend you go watch it. It is a really, really good movie. It's a beautiful movie. And so I highly, highly recommend you go watch it. But him, also like Tigger in our first art discussion, both kind of want a community. So something I thought was really interesting about these two mediums, with these two pieces of media that both kind of depict a character wanting and desiring community of people who are like them, but also kind of in the same frame discovering community that's a bit unlike them. I thought it was really interesting, especially like how prevalent I feel like this conversation kind of is. So I thought it was really interesting how, especially considering that like the conversations happening around community building and like having a place that you kind of belong, I feel like, at least personally, I feel like I'm seeing more conversations around that now than I could possibly conceptualize in the past. Granted, I was also a child when the Tigger movie came out, so that might explain a lot. But I do feel as though the conversation around finding a place to belong, finding a place to be like among people who like maybe not even just look like you, but who want to also be in community with you. I find it prevalent, those kinds of conversations more prevalent now, especially considering like the loneliness epidemic. There's, I feel like, far more ostracization happening now than it did in the past. In that, like, because the way social media works, because of the way a lot of tech works, because of a lot of like how a lot of people's schedules work nowadays, you're far busier than you were before. And I felt like it's interesting to see that, like, even still, like, these conversations over like 20 years apart are still kind of being had. Like, these feelings are still being felt. And like, it makes sense, especially now, considering everything, but it's really interesting that like that was also conversation to be had in the 2000s. Something else I thought was really cool is there is a bit of a dichotomy almost between the two movies. So like, while both of them are kind of seeking community on one hand, so for example with Marcel the Shell, he does kind of return to his community. He does kind of get that chance to be re-ingratiated with the people he knew, the people he grew up with, while also kind of developing a like kind of gaining more community through the guy that was kind of through Dean, the guy doing the videography stuff. Whereas in the Tigger movie, Tigger kind of didn't get that, and it was shown at least to be, while yes, it is sad to like not feel as though you're able to kind of re-ingratiate yourself with a past community or a community you really want to be a part of, whether that be like your family or anything like that. He did kind of, I like that it still showed that like community and like having that feeling or sense of belonging is still possible, even if those people aren't exactly your family, which I think is important in this day and age, considering how hectic, how like far away so many people are. I think it's important to create and kind of build a community where you are. And while yes, I do think it is difficult, I think it's definitely beneficial. And I thought it was really interesting to kind of see that dichotomy. Something that happened in Marcel with a Shell with Shoes On that I thought was a really interesting thing to kind of think about was there was actually there was a very cool line in there. Um, well, not necessarily a line, but like there's a point in the movie. So I told you how Marcel went viral online, and he believed he could use this virality to kind of help him with like finding his family, but it kind of turns out to like not be the case. I felt like that kind of sequence was a really interesting discussion almost on like community versus an audience. So like how oftentimes when people grow like become a part of like or have really big platforms, um oftentimes it is equated to community. It is equated to like, okay, these people are looking to me, and like I am also enjoying like interacting with these people. But it very quickly showed kind of like the difference between being a part of a community, which is like the shells and all the other little tinkerings and things that like he grew up with, that he knew, that knew him, that he was able to like kind of like not feel like he's putting a performance on for, versus the people who engaged with him almost as a product. And I thought that was really, really interesting, like, because I think that's an interesting conversation to have, especially in this age of social media, in this age of like virality, and people often being like shot into stardom almost like after doing maybe one or two things that a lot of people liked online, and like how very quickly like the focus of what it is that they're doing or who it is that they are kind of gets lost, and kind of everything sort of shifts. And I always thought that was really interesting, that I don't know, it's not quite what you think it's going to be. And because of that, I think it's really easy to get burnt out. And it can get really dangerous, even as like honestly it's shown in the movie, to second guess or to like not take it to consideration almost. And I will say, I do think both of those movies did a really good job. Even so, like I believe Marcel the Shell, I think, is probably like PG, maybe PG 13 or PG at least. And while the Tigger movie is just, it's absolutely something for kids. It's on Disney. Well, not that it like something being on Disney automatically makes it for kids, but the Winnie the Pooh series is generally for children. Tigger was my favorite character growing up. Actually, I used to collect a lot of them. I used to have a whole collection of them, like different holiday Tiggers and stuff. But then I lost a lot of them in the move when I moved, or when my family moved, and so I still have probably a few of them actually. Like here's one who records with me. But yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's really interesting ways to kind of be able to, if you want to have those conversations, there's a way you can do that, or there's a way you can feel seen through the media and through the art that you consume. But yeah, so in this episode, we kind of discussed community, this desire to feel like you're a part of something, this desire to feel like you belong, and how those feelings aren't new. Like we only discussed two medias, and they're like 20 years apart, but I think that's very much like shows that like feeling like you don't belong, or like you want to be a part of something, that you want to build a community, you want to have a community, it isn't a new feeling. And you're not alone in feeling it, because quite frankly, the movie Marcel the Shell did really, really well. Like I didn't find out about this movie until like last month, and then I only recently got around to watching it, and like looking up like the everything online, and like even the shorts and stuff, they all have like millions of views. And so that was really popular. And I think even like with this movie, these are feelings that you're not alone in feeling. You felt like you might have felt them for a long time, or you might have recently moved, and so you might be feeling these feelings a lot heavier. But yeah, you're not alone in feeling like that. But yeah, so maybe in feeling this desire to be a part of a community, that too is an art like everything else. Alrighty, so here is our final segment. So it used to be called, I used to call it Art of the Week. I've decided to shorten it to the awe moment. So this is just going to be the moment in the episode where I kind of talk about the art that made me think, or maybe even something that made me go, oh, like something that would like make me think. It came to me. It was really cool. I think it's a really cool idea, and I'm gonna go with it. So this art that made me think this week, or at least in this case, something that made me think this week, is actually a Tumblr post. It's a very old Tumblr post. I found a screenshot on Twitter, and it made me go like, that's a really interesting take. And I feel like, in a way, it can kind of relate to what we talked about this episode. So I'm gonna put this, I'm about to read it, but I'm also gonna put this on the screen for those who are watching on YouTube. If you're only listening, here it goes. So this is a Tumblr post written by user FMManiac, and it reads, it turns out that not talking to people often and not building and maintaining friendships and not going to social events because of anxiety and a fear of rejection is not in fact a safe option. Turns out there are in fact many cumulative, negative psychological, emotional, and social effects of this pattern of behavior. And so I chose that particular one. So personally, I mean, unless I know you, you probably wouldn't know this, but I personally do actually also struggle with social anxiety. So like in person, I may not be the most talkative, but I did think this was kind of pertinent because especially as someone like, especially like myself, and I'm sure it's like many people who want to build community, it's going to require talking to people. And it's going to require maintaining friendships, and it's going to require maybe even participating in social events that are at least that I consider to be safe or whatnot. And like not letting a fear of rejection kind of control the outcome. I think especially because can be difficult to build and grow community, that part of that difficulty is kind of like the fear of the work on our part, or at least for me, at least, in that like there's going to require work on my part to build the community that I desire. Like it won't just appear. And I think that is important to take into consideration when it comes to wanting to be a part of that community or wanting to have a community. Like there's gonna be work on your part to have and engage in having a community. And yeah, because there are definitely cumulative negative psychological, emotional, and social effects in not doing so. I believe as humans, we are very social creatures. I do believe having a community is far more beneficial than not having a community, and it can show in like your behavior in everything really. But yeah, that's all I have for you this episode. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Have a great rest of your day. Again, twofold. Bye.